You find yourself stepping through the creaking doors of a medieval hospital. At first glance, it feels almost comforting. The stone walls are lit by soft candlelight, and the air carries the faint aroma of rosemary, sage, and lavender herbs, said to heal the sick. Wooden beds line the hall, covered with rough linen sheets, where pale figures lie quietly in the half-dark. A priest murmurs prayers at the far end of the chamber, his voice low and steady, as if every word could tip the balance between life and death. But then your senses begin to betray you. The scent that seemed herbal now feels cloying, as though something rotten hides beneath the perfume. The candle flames flicker not with warmth, but with shadows that seem too eager to cling to the bodies on those beds. The patients don't look hopeful, they look resigned, their eyes glassy, their lips cracked and whispering words you can't quite catch. And then you see it. Beneath one of the beds, resting on cold stone, sits a wide ceramic basin, filled to the brim with dark, congealed blood. Not hidden, not discarded. Displayed as if it were part of the treatment. This is no place of healing. This is a stage where medicine, superstition, and cruelty perform side by side, where prayers mix with screams, where the tools of doctors double as instruments of torture. Welcome to the cursed chambers of medieval medicine. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because what you're about to uncover will make you grateful for every clean, sterile hospital in the modern world. You step further inside, letting the heavy wooden door swing shut behind you. The sound echoes through the hall louder than it should, like the groan of something ancient that doesn't want to be disturbed. For a moment, you tell yourself this is a place of mercy, that these walls were built to shelter the weak, to cradle the sick, to heal the broken. That illusion lasts only seconds. The hospital is colder than the night outside. Drafts snake down the stone corridors, carrying with them a damp odor of mold and human sweat. Straw is scattered across the floor to soak up what drips from the bed's bile, pus, blood, and it squishes unpleasantly beneath your shoes. The air is thick, not with hope, but with the slow rot of 100 bodies. A nurse passes you, her linen robe stiff with stains, her arms cradling a bundle of bloody rags. She doesn't look at you. Her eyes are fixed on the ground, her lips whispering a prayer so fast it sounds like a chant. You realize it's not for the patients, it's for herself. At the center of the ward stands a man in a dark robe, his head shaved like a monk's, but his belt heavy with iron tools. He's the physician here, though you can't tell if that title should comfort or terrify you. On his table lies a boy, no older than 12, trembling, his lips pale as parchment. The physician presses a small knife to the boy's arm, murmuring that this will release the sickness. The blade cuts, the boy gasps, and the blood flows freely into a wide ceramic basin placed beneath the bed. The physician bends over the bowl, examining the liquid with a concentration that borders on reverence. He stirs it with a thin stick, muttering about its humors, as though the color and thickness of this blood could tell him the secrets of the soul. He nods to himself, satisfied, then orders more blood to be drawn. You watch as the boy's eyes glaze. He's not being cured, he's being emptied. This is the promise of healing in the Middle Ages. It's not about recovery, it's about ritual, about balancing invisible fluids, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, blood that physicians believed ruled every body. Too much blood, they claimed, caused fever. Too much black bile, melancholy. So they cut and cut again, draining life in the name of balance. The basin fills slowly, a dark mirror reflecting the flickering candles above. And in its surface you see not health, but something cursed, a ritual sacrifice disguised as treatment. Around you, the other beds tell the same story. A woman's chest rattles as leeches cling to her skin, their bodies swollen with her blood. A man coughs black phlegm into a rag, only for the nurse to press a hot iron against his chest, as if fire could chase disease from the lungs. Every cure looks like punishment. Every prayer sounds like a dirge, and yet families still bring their loved ones here. They believe in the promise. They believe the priests when they say illness is sin and the only path to salvation is through suffering. To die in this ward is to die in holy company under the gaze of saints' relics nailed to the walls. To leave alive is a miracle that proves God still watches. But the truth is harder to swallow. The mortality rate here isn't whispered about, it's expected. Most who enter never walk out, and the few who do are left scarred, not just in body, but in mind. They speak of strange dreams of voices in the dark of shadows that linger even after the candles are snuffed. You look back at the basin. The physician is lifting it now, tilting it toward the light, nodding as if he sees hidden signs inside. To him, it's medicine. To you, it looks like an offering the hospital demands again and again. The boy's breathing falters. The physician doesn't notice. Or maybe he does and it doesn't matter. Because in this chamber, survival is not the goal. The ritual is. And as you stand there, the candles dim for just a moment, as if the shadows themselves lean closer to watch. The promise of healing has revealed itself. And it's a lie. But these rituals of healing were just the surface. What really happened inside was far darker. And the figures in the long-beaked masks had secrets of their own. You move deeper into the ward, and suddenly the air changes. The candles gutter, the whispers die down, and every head, patients and nurses alike, turns toward the doorway. They arrive in silence. Tall figures in long black coats, gloves of stiff leather, and boots that strike the stone floor like the slow tolling of bells. Their faces are hidden, concealed behind grotesque masks, long curved beaks stuffed with herbs, glass circles where eyes should be. They look less like healers and more like carrion birds, vultures circling a battlefield. You know them instantly, plague doctors. At first glance, the mask seems protective, almost comical. The beak, they claim, filters the poisoned air of disease with lavender mint and cloves. The thick coat shields them from contagion. But as you watch one doctor kneel by a patient's bed, you realize the outfit serves another purpose. It hides the man beneath. It lets him act without showing fear or conscience. The doctor opens a leather satchel. Inside, gleam iron hooks, bone saws, and a hand drill. He lifts one tool slowly, the lantern light sliding across its surface. The patient whimpers, a middle-aged man, his skull wrapped in sweat-soaked bandages. Without a word, the doctor places the drill against the man's temple and begins to turn. The grinding squeal echoes through the ward, drowning out the patient's screams. The other doctors do not flinch, neither do the nurses. This is routine, trepanation they call it. The release of evil vapors from the skull. To them, it is treatment. To you, it looks like torture, dressed in black robes. At the far end of the hall, another doctor tends to a coughing woman. She shivers violently as he mixes a silver paste into a goblet of wine. Mercury quicksilver said to cleanse the body of corruption. The woman drinks because he commands it, because his mask and robe give him the authority of both science and God. Minutes later, she is convulsing, froth bubbling from her lips. The doctor notes her reaction calmly, like a scholar recording an experiment. And all the while, the basin appears again. One doctor pulls it close, pours the woman's blood inside, and stirs with a thin rod. He squints, studying the thickness, the separation of red and black, the foam. He declares her spirit unbalanced, her fate uncertain. The others nod gravely. They are not healers. They are augurs, reading futures in blood. You glance at the boy apprentice standing near the satchel. He cannot be more than 13, his pale hands clutching a book of notes. He flinches at every scream, but does not turn away. His master nudges him sharply, forcing him to look. This is his education: to watch, to record, to learn how to drain life in the name of knowledge. His eyes flicker toward you for the briefest second, wide, terrified pleading. Then the mask turns his way, and he lowers his head. The plague doctors move methodically from bed to bed, never rushing, never hesitating. They press irons against swollen buboes, cut veins until patients collapse, force strange concoctions of arsenic and vinegar down dry throats. Each act disguised as healing, each act pulling the patient closer to death. And yet, the onlookers trust them. To the desperate, the mask is a symbol of wisdom, protection, divine authority. They cannot see the horror beneath. They cannot smell the rot that herbs cannot hide. You, however, notice something else. When the basin fills once more, one doctor tilts it, holding it high toward the candlelight. The dark surface ripples, reflecting the warped glass of his mask. In that reflection, you see something uncanny, the doctor's own silhouette bending and twisting as though the blood were alive, reshaping his image into something monstrous. He does not react. Perhaps he has seen it before. Perhaps this is what he seeks. The ritual is endless. Bleed, mix, predict, cut, burn, record. And always, always, the basin of blood passed from hand to hand, like a chalice at some unholy mass. You realize now the mask isn't just a barrier against disease, it's a shield against humanity. With their faces hidden, these men are no longer bound by pity, guilt, or shame. They become instruments of something colder, something older. And as you watch the apprentice wipe fresh blood onto the edge of the basin, you know he will become one of them. The mask is waiting for him. The air in the ward grows heavier, thick with incense and the copper tang of blood. Shadows stretch long across the walls, as if the chamber itself leans in to witness. The basin gleams darkly. The masks turn as one. And you realize the rituals of these physicians were never meant to save the sick. They were meant to sanctify the suffering. And soon the church itself stepped in, twisting medicine into theology and turning these chambers into something far more terrifying. You think it cannot get worse. But then the bells toll. Low and heavy, the sound rolls through the chamber, and with it comes a procession of robed priests. They carry candles, crucifixes, and books bound in black leather. Their eyes flicker not with pity, but with judgment. To them, these aren't patients. They are sinners. The plague has spread beyond the walls of the hospital. Outside, whole villages lie silent doors marked with red crosses, families locked inside with the dying. Fear swallows reason. And in that fear, the church steps forward, not with mercy, but with fire. The priests move among the beds, sprinkling holy water that stings when it touches raw wounds. Their voices rise in Latin chants, drowning out the moans of the sick. The physicians bow their masked heads, stepping aside. Medicine yields to theology. From now on, illness is no longer a matter of the body. It is proof of a corrupted soul. One priest pauses by a young woman writhing with fever. He presses a crucifix to her chest, forcing her back against the straw mattress. The devil dwells in her blood, he declares. At his command, the nurse brings forward a goblet. Inside sloshes a mixture of wine mercury and holy water, a sacrament of poison. The woman's lips are cracked, her throat parched. She drinks. What else can she do? Minutes later, she convulses, body arching like a bowstring, eyes rolling back as foam gathers at her mouth. The priest raises his hand and proclaims her purified, even as she lies twitching in the throes of death. You turn away, but your gaze catches something on a nearby desk, a diary. Its pages are spattered with ink and faint drops of blood. A nun writes feverishly, her hand trembling. Her script wavers as she records the rituals, the chants, the dying faces. She writes not for the church, but for herself, her only rebellion against silence. You see where her ink has smeared where her tears have fallen. The air grows thicker with every chant, suffocating, oppressive. The basin returns once again. A priest lifts it in both hands, dipping his fingers into the congealed blood and tracing a cross on the foreheads of the weak. Their skin breaks out in blisters where his touch lingers, but he smiles grimly, the mark of cleansing. Everywhere you look, faith has turned into punishment. Exorcisms performed beside the beds, holy relics pressed into wounds, until flesh-charged sinners declared damned because their coughs sound like laughter, their fevers like demonic rage. And yet, the people believe. Outside crowds gather to watch the sick carried into the hospital, whispering prayers of both fear and relief. Better the condemned be locked inside than wandering the streets. Better the cursed blood be spilled here than in their own homes. You feel the weight of centuries in this hall, not science, not healing, but a theater of suffering, where salvation is bought with agony. And then you hear it, a voice weak but clear from one of the beds. A man with hollow cheeks, eyes sunken deep. He whispers, "They said this place would save me." His breath rattles, but it is only a gate. You lean closer, but the priest pushes you aside. He pulls a veil over the man's face, begins chanting, and orders the basin brought forward. The blood is poured onto the floor, spreading darkly through the cracks in the stone. For a moment, you swear it moves against gravity, seeping upward, staining the priest's robes like living shadow. The man on the bed exhales once and does not breathe again. The chant continues. In this chamber, even death has been claimed by the church. To die is not release. It is evidence proof of corruption, another tally in their ledger of souls. And you know now that the real horror has only begun. But even death wasn't the end here, for beneath the hospital, the bodies of the damned were waiting, and their silence was louder than any prayer. You follow the priests as they retreat their chants, fading into silence. The ward above is heavy with incense and death, but beneath your feet, another chamber waits, colder, darker, far more honest. A narrow staircase spirals downward, lit only by a single torch sputtering against damp stone. The air thickens with every step, the scent of herbs and candle wax replaced by something raw and unmistakable: rot. When you reach the bottom, the torchlight reveals rows upon rows of bodies. They lie on rough planks stacked 3-4 high, mouths open as if frozen mid-scream. The flickering light paints their skin in shades of wax and shadow. Some are fresh, their wounds still glistening. Others are already skeletal ribs poking through tattered linen shrouds. The hospital above was a place of ritual suffering. Down here there is no pretense. This is a warehouse of the dead. But not all are silent. From somewhere in the chamber comes a low moan, so faint you wonder if it's only in your mind. You follow the sound, stepping carefully between the planks until you see a hand twitch. A man lies among the corpses, his lips moving weakly. He wasn't dead when they brought him here. Perhaps he fainted under the knife, or perhaps the priests declared his agony proof of damnation. Either way, he was discarded too soon. You lean closer. His eyes flick open, clouded, terrified. He mouths a word you can barely hear. Help! But before you can move, a door creaks open at the far end of the chamber. 2 men descend the steps, their lanterns swinging. They wear not priestly robes, but the long leather coats of physicians. Their masks glint in the light, the hooked beaks, the glass eyes. They don't pause when they see the still-breathing man. Instead, they seize him by the arms and drag him toward a table set apart from the rest. On the table lies a different kind of body, not prepared for burial, but for dissection. Its chest has been cut open, ribs pried apart, organs removed and arranged in bowls along the edge. A crude anatomy lesson. The physicians add the half-dead man to their experiment. His feeble cries are silenced by a gag his chest laid bare. One doctor lifts a blade dulled by use and with deliberate slowness begins to cut. The other watches, noting details in a thick ledger as if cataloging the secrets of life and death. This is no burial chamber. This is a laboratory of horror. And then you see it again, the basin. It sits at the edge of the table, darker now, its surface sticky with old blood. One of the physicians dips a cloth into it, wiping the man's exposed organs as if baptizing them in shadow. He mutters words you don't understand, not medical terms, but fragments of prayer. The man's body jerks once, then goes still. Another entry for the ledger. Another sacrifice to knowledge, or to something far older, hiding behind the mask of medicine. Around the chamber, the dead do not rest. You swear their heads turn in the shifting light that empty sockets fix on the basin, as though drawn to it. A current of air sighs through the room, carrying with it whispers and voices that do not belong to the living. The apprentice boy from earlier stands at the stairwell clutching his book. His face is pale, his knuckles white. For a moment, you think he will run. But then slowly he steps closer, drawn by the sight of the open body, the basin, the ledger. His master nods once and the boy begins to write. His hand shakes, but he writes. He is learning. You realize with a chill that this cycle will never end. The priests condemn the physicians, cut the apprentices, inherit. And beneath it all, the basin waits, filling, emptying, filling again. The torch sputters. The air grows colder. And as the physicians lean over their latest subject, you understand that in this chamber, death is not an end. It is a resource. And the doctors found a way to turn even corpses into instruments of terror. What began as burial soon became spectacle, an anatomy of horror. You climb back toward the stairwell hoping for air, but the scent of death clings to you like smoke. And then you hear a commotion, the sound of benches scraping against stone, voices, murmuring, boots shuffling. You follow the noise and find yourself in a vaulted hall one level above the morgue. Dozens of wooden seats rise in steep tiers circling a central platform, lit by guttering lanterns. At the center lies a body stretched across a table of rough oak, its skin glistening under the light. This is no hidden chamber. This is a theater. Men file into the benches, physicians, students, even nobles with fine cloaks and jeweled rings. They jostle for position, craning their necks for a better view, eyes wide not with compassion, but with morbid curiosity. This isn't a hospital anymore. It's a stage. The master physician enters. You recognize him by the beaked mask and the heavy book chained to his belt. His apprentice follows, pale but obedient, clutching the basin once more. It has been scrubbed, but the dark stains never fade. The master raises a hand, and the murmurs die into silence. With deliberate calm, he draws a blade across the corpse's chest. Flesh peels back, glistening red beneath the lamplight. The crowd leans forward, eager. The apprentice dips cloths into the basin and wipes the wound clean as though consecrating the act. The physician speaks as he works. His voice is muffled by the mask, but carries through the chamber a lecture, a sermon, half science, half superstition. He names the organs in Latin, tracing them with his blade, claiming they reveal the balance of humors, the seat of sin, the very map of the soul. The students scribble notes furiously. Nobles nod sagely, pretending to understand. Some whisper prayers, others smile thinly, but all are spellbound. You realize with a sick twist of your stomach, they are entertained. The corpse is not just a subject. It is a performer, unwilling, silent, carved open for the enlightenment and amusement of the living. And then the physician does something different. He signals to the apprentice. The boy lifts the basin high, its dark surface gleaming. The physician dips his gloved hands into it, then smears the blood across the corpse's organs. He mutters an invocation not to God, but to knowledge. The crowd shivers. Some cross themselves. Others lean closer as if hypnotized. You hear one man whisper, "If the body speaks, we will know truth." For a moment, the hall is utterly still. And in that silence, you swear you hear a sound, a wet sigh escaping from the corpse's throat. The audience gasps. The apprentice's eyes widen, but the physician does not flinch. He nods as if expecting it. The performance continues. He saws through bone lifts organs one by one, placing them into bowls around the table. Each piece is displayed to the crowd like a relic, explained in words that mix medicine with mysticism. The heart is weighed against a crucifix. The liver is declared a mirror of the soul. The stomach sliced open is blamed for the sins of gluttony, and still the basin gleams nearby, the blood within seeming to pulse with the flicker of the lamps. You look around at the faces of the students. Their eyes shine with hunger, not for healing, but for mastery. They want this knowledge, this power, this control over life and death. The apprentice scribbles his notes so fast, the ink splatters his face, pale but transfixed. He no longer looks horrified. He looks initiated. The physician raises his hands, dripping with blood. He declares that by cutting the body, he is cutting through the veil of ignorance, that through death they find truth. The audience erupts in murmurs of awe. Some even applaud. You realize you're not watching science, you're watching ritual dressed as learning. A mass dissected piece by piece in the name of progress, but haunted by something older, something darker. The smell of iron and decay fills your lungs, the lantern smoke casting the chamber in shadow. And in those shadows you imagine the dead watching, their hollow eyes fixed on the table, waiting for justice. One student leans to another and whispers, "The body twitched, did you see?" The other nods, his hands trembling. The physician ignores them, but you can't, because you saw it too. The hand of the corpse curled slightly, fingers twitching, as though resisting the knife. A trick of nerves, perhaps, or something else. The basin overflows, now red, spilling onto the stone. The apprentice steps back quickly, but the blood spreads too fast, too far, soaking into the cracks, creeping toward the benches where the audience sits. For a moment, the murmurs turn to panic. Cloaked nobles lift their feet, students drop their quills. But the physician slams his fist onto the table and commands silence. His voice rings through the hall. "Do not fear. This is knowledge made flesh. This is the price of truth." And then, as if in answer, the corpse exhales. A long, rattling breath, impossible from empty lungs. The audience freezes. The apprentice drops his book. The physician simply bows his head. He has seen it before. You feel the air shift heavy and electric, as though the chamber itself recognizes the trespass. For a heartbeat, you expect the corpse to rise, to speak, to curse them all. But instead, silence falls again. The students resume their notes. The nobles settle back into their seats. The physician returns to his work. The performance continues as though nothing happened. But you know what you saw. And you know the horror here is not the twitch of a corpse or the sigh of a dead throat. The true horror is how quickly the living forget, how easily they transform suffering into spectacle, and how willingly they applaud. But the most cursed legacy of all wasn't left in these chambers. It seeped outward into the birth of modern medicine, into every hospital that followed. The basin of blood did not stay buried. You leave the anatomy theater, your ears still ringing with the echo of saws against bone, your nose heavy with the stench of blood. You think the horror should end here, trapped in the dark stones of the medieval hospital. But it doesn't, because what you've witnessed was not buried with the dead. It spread carried in the notebooks of apprentices, in the sermons of priests, in the whispers of students who left these cursed chambers to become the architects of medicine itself. The basin followed them. Not the ceramic bowl itself, but the idea of it. The belief that blood pain and sacrifice could reveal hidden truths. That a body was not a sacred vessel, but a resource to be drained, cut, studied. This philosophy seeped like rot into every corner of early science. You see it centuries later in Renaissance anatomy theaters, where dissection became public entertainment crowds, cheering as professors carved open the nameless poor. You see it in the bloodletting craze that persisted into the 19th century, physicians insisting balance could only be restored by draining life itself. You see it in grim experiments during wars when soldiers and prisoners became subjects their suffering justified as progress. The faces change, the tools sharpen. The rooms grow cleaner, brighter, wrapped in white linen instead of black shadow. But the basin is still there, hidden beneath the surface, collecting the cost. Even today, when you step into a modern hospital, sterile lights humming overhead, the smell of antiseptic replacing incense echoes of the legacy linger. The fear of patients who feel more like objects than humans. The cold detachment of doctors who see numbers before names. The unease that comes when you sign consent forms realizing your body has become data, your blood, a sample, your pain, a case study. The cursed chambers of medieval medicine have not vanished, they've evolved, and if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers of patients, drained until death, of priests declaring sickness, a sin of physicians in long-beaked masks, reading futures in basins of blood. The motif repeats one last time. You imagine that basin now not of ceramic, but stainless steel shining under fluorescent lights. Blood pooling red against silver, carried away to labs, measured, studied, cataloged. Progress? Yes. But also an echo of something darker, because in the end, healing and horror have always shared the same table. The candlelight may have been replaced by halogen lamps, the plague mask by surgical gowns, the chants by clinical language. But the truth remains, every step forward in medicine has been purchased with suffering, and in those moments when fear outweighs compassion, when bodies are reduced to tools, the cursed chamber is reborn. You find yourself back at the hospital door. Outside, the night air feels sharper, cleaner, almost safe. But as you glance over your shoulder, you see shadows still moving inside, flickering like ghosts behind stone walls. The basin waits there, still patient as ever, waiting for the next offering. So next time you walk into a hospital, remember it hasn't always been a place of comfort. In the cursed chambers of medieval medicine, healing and cruelty were the same thing. If this story made your skin crawl, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more journeys into the dark side of history. Tell me in the comments, would you have survived these chambers?